In the courtroom, there is a sidebar. The jury has been sent out while some evidentiary issues are being discussed. In the meantime, we have our Law News senior trial producer, Cathy Russon. Cathy, thank you so much for popping in here. There's so much to talk about in this case. I really want to review some of the testimony that we heard today. What did you make of law enforcement's account? I thought the prosecution really got them on the cross.
Look, this case is crazy. And for those that have not really gotten into this case, they need to go back and watch the archives. This case is just unusual from what we normally see. We normally see officers and prosecution kind of on the same team. And now we've got the opposite of that, because what happened is the law enforcement and EMTs showed up on the scene early morning hours of the 12th, and they had previous information. You know, whenever they get a call to a residence on their laptops or whatever, comes up all previous calls they've had to that residence. So they knew going in that this alleged victim had already been Baker acted at one time and involuntarily committed. They knew that she had threatened suicide in the past. And so they went into that with that mindset. And so when they go in there and she tells them, look, an officer attacked me last night and I finally passed out, and when I woke up this morning, my car's running in the garage and the door from the garage to my kitchen is open, and he tried to kill me. He tried to shove pills down my throat last night. They're thinking this lady's off her rocker. And so they did not take that seriously at first. And I think it's because they came in knowing her history, which, you know, you need to know the person's history, so I get that. And now it's one of their own she's accusing. So they did not, in my opinion, do what they needed to do on the scene that day.
You made so many great points there, Cathy, and one of those points is that this is very unusual that you see the prosecution going after law enforcement. Usually it's the prosecution that wants to say, oh, the investigation was conducted in a great way. They identified the correct defendant and all of that. But here, it's the defense that really wants the law enforcement's account of the investigation to win the day. So that's very unusual. And also, that idea of a preconceived notion, and the prosecution said that several times to each of the witnesses. She said, well, didn't you think this was just a crazy person who was making up this story? Using that word, a crazy person, in her cross-examination. And Cathy, don't you think that in this investigation that certainly played into the mindset of law enforcement?
Oh, look, 100%. You know, on one hand, I can understand why law enforcement went about this the way they did, because like I said, the past history they had. But here's the other thing. Her supposed friend, longtime friend and neighbor, Marianne Dombrow, was called. That's who the victim called that morning, was her friend. And Marianne got on the scene and she found the car running in the garage and all that. And then 911 was called. Her own friend tells officers, look, I don't believe her story. I don't believe she was attacked. I think she fell and hit her head on the tub, and that's why there's like a cut by her eyebrow and a spot of blood here. So now they have history of the victim, and they have her friend and kind of caretaker that did things for her, telling them on the side, I don't really think she was attacked. So everyone's against this woman. If this really happened, she had no one in her corner.
Right, and everyone's against her, and not to mention the person who's accused is one of their own. It's a former deputy sheriff. So obviously law enforcement erring on the side of, okay, well, she's been committed before, she's been suicidal before, her neighbor said this, so we're going to take that account of the story to heart instead of actually looking to Bybee, who is one of our own. But Cathy, one of the points that the prosecution made, and a point that I think will be something that will be hammered home in the closing argument, is that even if you have that preconceived notion, that does not alleviate your responsibility as an officer of the law to collect all relevant evidence. It's not subjective if there's blood somewhere, if a car is running, when there's a violent crime being reported. That is all evidence that should have been taken into consideration. Don't you agree that that's going to weigh heavily in the jury's mind?
Look, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Now, later, they did go back. Crime scene technician showed up on the stand. Showed up at the place, and he took photos of her, and he took photos of the garage, and he testified yesterday. So, they did end up doing an investigation. But, I don't know if we have time. Well, they've broken in court, but I don't think there's anything live going on. But we, at some point, maybe the next break, need to get into this. If this is all true, what happened, if what she's saying is true, the diabolical plan of Deputy Frank Bybee is like unbelievable. The things that TV movies are made of. You know, he had information that she previously told someone she would kill herself by turning her car on in her garage. We saw that come out. He knew that. So if he really did all this, it's really diabolical. He set her up.
Definitely. It seems that he may have been someone taking advantage of this woman who was elderly and who had some trust in him. It looks as though the officer is back on the stand, so we're going to go live to the courtroom. Cathy,